slightly to her French accent. So it made sense to me that she would come with us to France. After all, she was, emphatically, French. I flew with my parents from New York to Paris and then took a train to Deauville, a seaside resort in Normandy. Deauville looked then, and still looks now, frozen in the mid-20th century, with its grand hotels and long beach dotted with large, colourful beach umbrellas, to which liveried waiters brought three-course meals on silver trays. We went there to meet the French relatives because that is where they like to go on holiday from their homes in Paris, albeit rarely with one another. Even though I was only 5 at the time, my memories of this holiday are clearer than of ones I took in my teens and 20s. Partly this was from the novelty of being outside of America for the first time, and the experience was as jarringly formative as the first day of school or my first job. But it's also because my family takes so many photos, and more photos were taken of this holiday than of most people's weddings, mainly by the family photographers, my grandmother's brother Henri and my father. We are also a family of anecdotalists, and it is impossible for me to separate now what I actually remember about this trip and what I remember from the photos and stories told afterwards. Am I remembering actual memories, or are they memories of memories? In my family, the line between the two is not always clear. But everything I have written here about this trip has been corroborated by those wise enough to make this distinction better than me. My parents, in other words. On our first night in Deauville, we arranged to meet everyone at the front of the hotel dining room before dinner. I assumed that my French family would turn out to be like my American one, and I'd be running up and down the beach with my new relatives the way I ran around Cincinnati with my cousins, because in my 5 years of experience, that's what extended families were like. But when we arrived in the dining room, a group of impossibly old people was waiting for us, none of whom looked predisposed to run anywhere. Only 2 of them could speak English, Alex McGee and Sonia. The rest just smiled and nodded at me, and I, gripping my mother's hand, shyly did the same back. Deauville, it turned out, was nothing like Cincinnati. So it was with some relief that I saw my grandmother arriving, the last of the group. At least I knew her, and she spoke English. But instead of joining us, she hung back, watching her siblings and cousins. Just as I was about to go over to her, I noticed something I'd never seen before. She was crying, and then she turned around and rushed out of the room. "What's wrong with Grandma?" I asked my mother, but she shook her head at me and held her finger to her lips. I looked up at my father for an answer, but he was looking towards where his mother had disappeared and went after her. Alex McGee, whose real surname was Glass, like Henri and Sonia, as well as my grandmother originally, and it didn't occur to me to ask why he'd apparently changed it, had a cabana on the beach, and my parents said I could use it to change in and out of my swimsuit. Having one's own cabana seemed to me the absolute pinnacle of cool, but that was before I saw what Alex Ornstein had on the beach, his own giant umbrella, red with a blue flag on top, and every day we would all meet under it for lunch, attended to by smartly dressed waiters. Even though it was Alex Ornstein's umbrella, Alex McGee dominated those lunches. He was small, bald, and tough like a bullet, but he loved talking with my father as well as his cousin Alex Ornstein, who he occasionally embraced fondly. He didn't give hugs to my sister or me, but he seemed to enjoy talking with us, telling us about the famous artists he knew, none of whom we'd ever heard of, because we were, respectively, 3 and 5 years old. When I got lost on the beach one day, it was Alex McGee and his cabana I looked for, because I knew he'd know how to get me home. Like my grandmother, Sonia was short and had red hair, but where Sala was thin, quiet, and melancholic, Sonia was a solid ball of vibrating energy. With her bright hair, pink lipstick, and blue eyeshadow, she looked like a firecracker. She taught my sister and me how to play bridge and introduced us to pain au chocolat, which was even more exciting than bridge. In the morning, she would meet us in the hotel lobby and walk us onto the beach, where she seemed to know every person on the boardwalk. "Who is that?" I asked once, after she'd had a long, involved conversation with an older American lady about their respective dogs. "I have no idea," she replied, marching onwards. Sonia's husband, Henri, was, at 6 foot, about a foot taller than his wife and siblings, but gentler than them, and at 83 still strikingly handsome. He would catch my eye across the table and make apologetic smiles for not being able to speak English, and he would often hold my grandmother, stroking her hair like she was still his baby sister. When Sonia and Alex McGee argued viciously over lunch, Henri would just sit back, letting it blow over. We all knew you shouldn't get between a firecracker and a bullet. Alex and Manya Ornstein were the frailest.